Good evening and welcome to the Parshah webcast. This week the portion is the fourth of the book of Deuteronomy, known as Parshas Re'eh. Parshas Re'eh begins with Hashem putting before the Jewish people the two paths in life. The good path, the path of life, and the path of which is not good, the path of death. You can follow Hashem's commandments and see blessing, or you can violate Hashem's commandments and bring upon yourself the curse. And then it goes into many, as I mentioned, these portions are so full of different details, it's hard to even make a synopsis of them. He talks about the prophecy and the false prophet and how to detect a false prophet. Talks about the Beis HaMikdash, that it has to be in Jerusalem and where you're allowed to bring sacrifices, where you're not allowed to bring sacrifices. And once they built the Beis HaMikdash in Jerusalem, every other place in the world became prohibited to be used as a sacrificial offering. You can't bring anywhere else other than Jerusalem, no matter what. And then he talks about he gives the license to eat meat, to eat the flesh of an animal, and what you have to do before you eat the flesh of an animal. You have to slaughter it properly. The prohibition against eating blood, and he's very, very careful, very strict about it. He says you have to make sure never to drink any blood, as if we really want to eat blood. But there is this emphasis on not spilling blood and eating blood and drinking blood and so on and so forth. And the next thing that he talks about is, as I mentioned, the prophecy. And then he goes into other many different laws until he gets to the end of the part. Later on he talks about the laws of keeping kosher. What animals are kosher, what animals are not kosher, the two signs of a kosher animal, those that if it has split hooves and chews its cud, different animals, different birds, which birds are kosher, which birds are not kosher, gets into all of this. At the end of the portion, he talks about the holidays. Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, what you have to do on them, he talks about giving tzedakah in this portion. There's so much in there. Must be 50, 60 mitzvahs just in this portion, maybe more. It's just almost every verse, every two verses, another mitzvah. But what I want to do is take snippets today. We'll do a little different. Instead of focusing on one thing, we'll do 5 minutes on different subjects and the lessons that we can learn from it. I'll start with the beginning. The beginning, as I mentioned, he says, and I quote, and I want you to pay attention to the words here. See, he says. Moshe is talking to the Jewish people. Re'eh, see. I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, that you listen to the commandment of Hashem, your God, and that I command you today. The curse, if you do not listen to the commandments of Hashem, your God, and you stray from the path that I command you today, to follow the gods of others that you did not know. Did you pay attention to any interesting language here that throws itself in your eyes? You can see clearly that there's a distinction between the blessing and the curse. I'll read it again and I'll emphasize the difference. When he talks about the blessing, again, see, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, how do we usually interpret these verses? God is saying basically, I'm putting before you a blessing and a curse. The blessing you'll get if you listen to my words. The curse you'll get if you don't listen. That's the simple meaning of these verses. But is that what it says? It doesn't exactly say that. If you take a look a little closer, you'll see that it doesn't say that. And I'll read it for a third time now. Now I'm sure you'll pick up on it. See, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, that you listen to the commandments of Hashem your God, that I command you today. And the curse, if you do not listen. By the curse, it says you're going to be cursed if you do not listen to Hashem. By the blessing, it doesn't say if you listen to Hashem. It says the blessing that you listen to the commandments. As if he's saying that the very listening to the commandments, that's the blessing. Let's read it in Hebrew.
You only have to listen?
To do. No, it means to do. If you'll follow.
Oh, okay.
The blessing is that you'll follow Hashem's way. The curse will come if you don't follow. But it doesn't say the blessing will come if you follow. At least here it doesn't say that. And I've always understood this to mean that the difference between what the Torah is trying to tell us is two things. First of all, if you listen, you'll be blessed with good things. If you don't, you'll be cursed. But then the Torah is telling us something even deeper. What is a blessed life? When you follow Hashem's way. Forget the result. Even if it's not that the blessing will be, you'll get a lot of money and a lot of health and a lot of Elam Haba, the world to come, if you do these and these things, if you listen to my voice. No, the very lifestyle of a Yid that's committed to Torah Mitzvah, that is the blessing. Your life is blessed. Your neshama and your body are in sync. You're happy. You're in touch with a higher reality. You have focus in life. You have nachas. Your kids have focus in life. You have a sense of mission. You have a reason to wake up. That alone is the blessing. What do you need more than that? As a bracha asher tishmu. The bracha is that you will listen. That itself is the greatest blessing. Look at people that live their life in accordance with Hashem's will. It doesn't say anywhere that these people will never suffer tragedy. They do suffer tragedy. This week we had the yard site of Levi Klutsky. I don't know if you remember his story. Never. A frum couple in Jerusalem, in Borough Park. This kid was kidnapped and murdered and dismembered. It was a horrific story in New York, done by another Jew. It was an unbelievable. You remember? Everyone remembers.
Yeah,
Sure.
1 year ago this week.
felt like it was yesterday, yeah, of course.
Tragedies happen. Doesn't mean if you put on tefillin and you keep Shabbos that you'll never have another bad thing happen to you. But the blessing is in that itself. Even when there's tragedy, even when there's hardships, a Yid that's connected to Hashem and living his life in accordance with Hashem's will copes with it better, is able to deal with it. It's hard. It's not. This is a tragedy on all the worst degree. He has he's able to move. He has something. They cope. They believe in Hashem. They have faith. They're not making sense of the tragedy. No one's going to make sense of it. But somehow, they're able to recognize a higher power in all of it. And it eases the pain. It does ease the pain. I was just sitting last Friday with a Yid, a fine Jew, a nice Jew, a good Jew, who suffered a tragedy when he was a young man. He's no longer so young, but he traveled 35 years ago. He suffered a terrible tragedy. And he still didn't get over it. And not that you should get over it. But he's angry at God and he doesn't want to have anything. It's a whole story, don't ask. I want to say it on the video. A kid that's connected to Hashem, as habroch asher tishmu, the very fact that you're living a life that is dedicated to Hashem, you're living the way He wants, that alone is the blessing. Your hardships will not be such hardships. Your life is going to be focused. Your whole life is a blessing. So that's number one. And then, of course, the simple meaning. If you listen, you'll get blessing. If you don't, you won't. What?
I would interpret it that Hashem has trust in us, that we will do that. He's coming in positive way. That Asher Tasu et mitzvotai. He doesn't come that...
You're saying that he's promising, he's predicting that we will.
Yeah, he's trusting us.
Very good. It's a very nice
us.
interpretation. I like it. That's a very good interpretation, by the way. What Hashem is saying over here is, not if you will listen. There's no question you will listen. That's a very nice word you just said. He doesn't say if you listen, he takes it for granted that we will. And then you'll be blessed. In the negative, he says if. Over there, he says if. By the positive, he doesn't say if. He's sure that we will.
So if he's sure, then you shouldn't have to say, you'll be cursed if you don't.
Okay, there's always a possibility. In other words, the confidence is that... in other words, he's talking to a Yid. So he's saying, he's laying it out in the following way. A Yid has natural dispositions to do the right thing. He's going to listen. Amol, a Yid goes crazy, and he doesn't listen. He acts out of normal. He acts abnormally. You can go, that can happen. So he's telling you, if you start becoming a little bit... if you start acting not in your natural way, you're going to be cursed. But that's a big if. As Hashem has faith in the Jewish people in this verse. It's a very important point. It's very encouraging. He doesn't put the positive and the negative on the same scale. He doesn't look at a Yid and say, "Oh, you can do it this way. I'm not sure what you're going to do." No. Hashem said, you're going to follow the mitzvahs. That's what you are. That's who you are. That's your natural disposition. You have a neshama. What then are you going to do? Amol, it could be that you're going to act ridiculous and you won't choose to do that. You'll choose to be a behemoth. Animalistic. It's like when a mother has a baby, yeah? She talks to the little baby in the crib, yeah? And she says, no, you're going to grow up and you're going to go to college and you're going to have a good life and we're going to provide for you, we're going to send you to this college and you can do great things. And if you don't, there's not, by the positive, there's no if you go to college. You're going to college. But if you don't, you make problems, you're going to start making trouble. Then there'll be problems.
I know.
That's how Hashem talks to the Jewish people. That's how Hashem talks to Jewish people. You're going to grow, I know you, you're going to grow up, you're going to learn Torah, and you're going to do mitzvahs, and you're going to be blessed. And if you're not, that means if you start acting like out of character, to Swiss, and you're going to have problems. Very nice way of putting it. Yeah. Shkayach. Yeah.
I'm sorry again. We tried.
You have to be so sorry.
Because
this class is a conversation.
But I have a thing in my mind.
Yeah.
That, during the prophet, we tried why tzaddik veralo and rasha vetovlo.
Yeah.
So how does that work with that?
That's my point. That's exactly what I said.
I know.
That the very fact that he's living a Torah life is itself the blessing. Doesn't mean you're not going to have tragedies. The fact is we do. Good people suffer sometimes. Nebuch. It's not a good question. Why should good people suffer? It doesn't make any sense. And we need that to end. But in our life, we see that Rabbi Akiva suffered, and this one suffers. And that's the way it is. So the bracha is not always that you're never going to suffer. This bracha is the very fact that you're a Yid, and that you're connected and living a lifestyle of God. That alone is the bracha, that even when you suffer, you're not really suffering. You turn it into a blessing, you turn it into a catalyst for something greater. You turn every tragedy into something positive. That's the way you'd behave. That's the way you'd... That's the bracha of being focused and having a lifestyle that is connected to Hashem. That even the tragedies turns into a blessing. To positive. We should never know of tragedy. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not a contradiction to that statement in the
I understand. I don't
actually, that's the whole point. I don't either understand why good people suffer. Don't get me. I'm not trying to justify that at all, or not in no way, shape, or form. Should you understand that as me kind of like letting it go through and saying it's fine? Not fine at all. That's Hashem's business. I don't run the world, and I certainly don't run that part of the world.
Well, part of our tikkun. Part of our tikkun.
I don't know if it's part of our tikkun. It can be with tikkun without suffering.
We had the Sarah
We need to suffer.
for example.
Right, so that's part of a tikkun. What do we need to have a tikkun? Hashem can't make us good, a tikkun without the suffering. I don't know what it's about, the suffering. It's a separate issue. I don't want to discuss that tonight. It would be too long. We'll never get out of here. Not that I want to get out of here, but,
Okay, we'll stay on that.
There's another interesting subject here, and that is that of the false prophet. I just want to give you a little simple, legalistic synopsis of that issue. The Torah over here says, and it's on page 141, and this is what he says: if a prophet should stand up in your midst, a prophet or a dreamer or of a dream, and he will give you a sign or a wonder. He'll make a wonder. He'll make the sea split. Imagine, a person comes to you today and takes you outside to the ocean, and he says, I'm a man of God. And he says, you don't believe me? Let me show you what I can do. And he takes the staff on the ocean, splits. You'll be impressed, no? I'm sure you will. And then he tells you, and the sign or the wonder comes about. It happens. He makes it happen. Out of which he spoke to you. Saying, now after he did the sign, he says to you the following: God told me that we don't have to keep Shabbos anymore. Or God told me that we can go worship an idol. Or God told me that tomorrow morning you don't have to put on tefillin. Now you're saying to yourself, this is a man of God. He split the sea for me. I mean, this is no joke. So probably I don't have to keep Shabbos anymore. He knows what he's talking about. Do you listen to him or not?
No.
You don't.
You don't.
And if he told you tomorrow morning we don't have to put on tefillin, do you listen to him or not?
No.
So the law is as follows. The din is like this. I'll give you an example for this. You know the story in the Tanakh of Eliyahu and the Mount Carmel? There was a famous showdown with the prophets of the idol, of the Baal. Most of the Jewish people were worshipping idols at that time. In fact, it says that only 7,000 Jews remained loyal to God in the whole Israel. Or something like that. And Eliyahu said, I had enough. The whole world, the whole Jewish world is worshipping an idol. So he said enough already. And there was the prophets of the Baal, and they had priests, and don't ask. So he said, you know what, we're going to once and for all decide this matter. So he invited all the prophets of the idol to come onto Mount Carmel over there in the north near Haifa. And he brought the Jewish prophets, those are the God's prophets, himself and others. And he says, we're going to now do a test. Both sides are going to build altars. And both sides are going to offer offerings. And we're going to see which offerings Hashem will consume. A fire will come down from heaven, and the one that the altar, that in other words, if the offerings of my offerings will be consumed, then you know Hashem is the real one. And if the offerings of the idols, of the prophets of the idols will be consumed, then you'll know the idols are right. And they did that. And the famous story, the fire came down and consumed Eliyahu's sacrifice. But the rabbis asked the famous question. Wait a minute. In this portion we read in Re'eh, we read that once the Beis HaMikdash was built, you're not allowed to bring offerings outside the Beis HaMikdash. So how was Eliyahu Hanavi able to instruct them to bring offerings on Mount Carmel, which is on the other side of Israel? Not even close to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem.
Good question.
It's a very good question. Over here it says that if a prophet comes to you and he makes magic, not magic, but real miracles, wonders, and he says, therefore you can violate a law, you don't listen to him. So how did they listen to Eliyahu Hanavi?
Because they had the place of sacrifice all over Israel.
Not according to the Torah law. The Torah law is clearly against that.
Yes, it's only one pasuk in the Torah saying not to do it, but it's the same way that you say, I'm building the Bet HaMikdash in Jerusalem and I'm closing all the synagogue in Israel.
The gods, no, that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah in the Torah is that sacrifices cannot be brought anywhere outside the Beis HaMikdash once the Beis HaMikdash was built. Before the Beis HaMikdash was built, you can bring in your backyard. You build an altar and you can bring a sacrifice. But once it was built, you can't. So how did Eliyahu do what he did? It goes against. So the answer is, not to keep this going too long, the simple answer is that if a prophet tells you that one time I was told by God to violate the law, you listen. But if he tells you from now on you never have to do this anymore, you don't listen. You kill him. That means like this: if a prophet tells you tomorrow, this Shabbos we're allowed to violate because I have a commandment from God, a special instruction that this Shabbos we violate. I'm not undoing the mitzvah of Shabbos. It's just this Shabbos. If he's a bona fide prophet, you listen to him. That's the power they have. And that's why they listen to Eliyahu, because he said this one time we're doing it. But if the prophet comes and says Shabbos is no longer a mitzvah, God told me there's only 612 mitzvahs from now on, or that you don't have to bring offerings in the Beis HaMikdash, you can always bring it outside, they would kill Eliyahu Hanavi if he said such a thing. They'd put him to death, and they should. And Eliyahu wouldn't say such a thing. Why not? So Moshe explains in somewhere else, he says, what is the prophet telling you? In a sense, the prophet is telling you that what you saw at Mount Sinai is no longer real. What did we see at Mount Sinai? The whole Jewish people were there when God spoke to us and told Moshe all the mitzvahs and said to him that this is a mitzvah forever. I'm never changing this. So a prophet now comes and says, because I split the sea for you, I made another trick. Well, not a trick, even if it's, he has some power. And telling me that what I saw is no longer real. That's ridiculous. Because he split the seas. Imagine like this. A prophet comes and tells you, a guy comes and says, come, I'm going to show you that I know I'm a real person. He splits the sea for you. And then he tells you, by the way, in New York there was a hurricane today. You weren't in New York, you were in Florida, you didn't hear, you don't know. You probably believe him, right? But if that guy that split the sea came and told you today, after he splits the sea, ooh, this is a real person, he's a man of God, and he tells you, you know what? You 10 people were not in this room tonight. If he would tell you that, what would you do? You would send him to a psychiatrist. What do you mean we weren't in this room? We were in this room. You can't tell me I wasn't here. I'm very impressed with your splitting of the sea and with your other wonders that you can do. But you can't tell me that something I experienced and something I saw I didn't. That doesn't make any sense. So therefore Hashem says like this. He's going to split the sea for you and make other wonders. Very nice. But the minute he tells you to undo something that you yourself saw at Mount Sinai, he's lying. He can't do that. Because you were there at Mount Sinai and you saw it. So how could you believe him? How could you believe him that Hashem came to him today to tell him that what I said at Sinai is not true? When you yourself heard what went on Sinai. You understand? So the wonders don't impress us at that point. But if he tells you what you heard at Sinai is 100%, but I'm just telling you that there's a reason why today we shouldn't keep Shabbos. There's a reason today we have to offer an offering on Mount Carmel. There was a legitimate reason. Then you listen. Then it's a mitzvah to listen. Just like it's a mitzvah to keep Shabbos every other Shabbos, it's a mitzvah not to keep Shabbos this Shabbos. That becomes a mitzvah. And then one final point. This is something I once said, but it's always good to say it again because of the lesson that we learn from this. And that is as follows in the laws of kosher. The laws of kosher are like this. There is a law that goes as follows. There is the system, the way what God did with the laws of kosher is as follows. He enumerated all the kosher beasts. He enumerated, and everything else is not kosher. Whatever is kosher, he enumerates, and whatever is not, is not. In other words, why? Because there's much more non-kosher beasts than kosher beasts. So he enumerates the less one. He enumerates that which is fewer, which is kosher. When it comes to birds, it does the opposite. There are much more kosher birds than non-kosher birds. So what does he do in this portion? He enumerates all the non-kosher birds and says everything else is kosher. You know why we're not allowed to eat these animals? The reason we're not allowed to eat animals that are not kosher is because they possess characteristics that are negative. Predators or whatever. Other characteristics. And Hashem doesn't want us to eat that meat. Because we eat the meat, we eat the characteristics also in a sense.
Lowers us.
It lowers us. You are what you eat. In other words,
you
you absorb the negative characteristics of those animals, so it affects your character as well. And Hashem doesn't want that. He wants us to elevate ourselves, not to bring us down. Food can be an elevating agent, but He doesn't want it to be a thing that brings you down. The same thing with the birds. The birds sometimes, they're negative character. He doesn't want us to eat them. So there's one interesting bird over here that the Torah enumerates. Where is it? The what?
Chasida.
The chasida. The chasida is one bird that the Torah says not to eat. Even though Rashi says something very interesting about the chasida. What is a chasida? A chosid. It's a nice name.
She takes very good care of her young.
Of her friends, it says. Why is she called a chasida? So Rashi says, because she's kind with her. What is the language? I'll tell you exactly the language.
What is that in English?
She's
I'll tell you in a
loyal to
minute.
her mate all her life. She's very good to the
Here.
young.
Is that what a chasida is?
An ostrich?
Stork.
Stork.
Rashi
Rashi says that the reason she's called a chasida is because she does nice things with her friends. Im chavroteha. She mitchasedet im chavroteha. She acts kindly to her friends, which is a good character, which is a nice, good thing, not a bad thing.
So
the question is, why is this a non-kosher animal? I once shared with everyone over here, I don't know if it was in the class, but it's worthwhile saying it over. It's a beautiful idea. The reason that that's not kosher is because the Rashi is exact in his word. The rabbis were exact. They said she's kind with her friends.
Mm-hmm.
Just the friends. Her close, inner circle.
Everybody else, she's not kind.
Not everyone. There's a lot of people that they like to invite for Shabbos. My friends, the more important people, the exciting people, someone I can carry a good conversation with, someone that is interesting to talk to, someone I know from where. But Stamazay, a guy that doesn't bring anything to the table, I don't have to invite them, I don't have to be nice to them. She's kind only with her friends. A lot of people like that. They're very nice, but only to the people they like to be nice to. Either because they get something in return, or because it's their social circle. That's not real kindness. That's selfishness. You're doing it for your own because you enjoy it. Because you get something out of it. It's exciting to you. You need a social life. So naturally, a social life means a give and take. So you're going to be nice, they'll be nice to you. It's a circle of friends that you're nice to. It doesn't mean that you're nice. That's not a good sign of kindness. Kindness is when you're kind to everyone. A real kind person doesn't select who he's kind to. He's going to be kind to everyone. So the Hasidah has a character. It's not a predator. Maybe they are. I don't know. But the point is that it has a certain quality. I like to say, and I don't want this to sound like it's judgmental, but in our society, this is the society of the Hasidah. American society, to a certain extent, is the society of the Hasidah. In a way. Although I should say the Rebbe always used to speak about America as a Malchus Shel Chesed, a kingdom of kindness. It spreads goodness and money. It supports the whole world. But I'm not talking about American as a country. We have to, let's put it this way, we have to look at this idea and internalize it and see if it's a little bit true with us as well. I remember I was speaking to someone about a Seder, not here in Weston, somewhere else. I was having a conversation with them, and after the first days of Pesach, I asked them how was Yisdorim. It was beautiful. Well, it was so beautiful. We had so many people. We had 25, 30 people. Who did you have at your tables? He starts enumerating. I had my kids and my family and my grandkids, and I had my this neighbor and my friends, and it was just a great get together. And it turns out that there was a whole list of people in that community that needed to be invited. They had nowhere to go. It was like the orphans, not orphans, but women, single parent moms or single dads. They had nowhere to go, and they're the unfortunate of society, that really need the help. And sometimes people feel, well, I don't know if I should bring that person. He's undernick. He's not so. What's he going to do at my table? Is he going to behave properly? Is he going to embarrass me in front of my friends? What kind of a person is he? All these kinds of calculations. And someone even once told me, this person even told me, I can't have such people over at my house. Simple said, I wasn't even embarrassed to say it. I don't know who they are, it's not my circle, and finished. The rabbi will find them a place, and he did. They had a place to go. It's not that they were homeless, they didn't have a Seder. The rabbi took care of everyone in the community. But this family did not want to take them in. Why not? Because they're a Hasidah. They're kind to their friends, but that's it. And this is a non-kosher animal. This says that the Torah is a non-kosher kindness. Kindness has to be real. Chesed is not a joke. Chesed is the hallmark of the Jewish people, is kindness. It says Avram, what was the main quality of Avram?
Tzaddik.
But no, it doesn't say he was a tzaddik, it says that he was a man of chesed. He was the manifestation of kindness in this world. And that's what he bequeathed to every Yid. And Avram didn't pick and choose who he invited into his tent. He even took Arviim, Arabians that were lowly. Come inside. He made place for everyone. This is a very big, important quality that American Jewry and American Jewry all over the world has to internalize. We lost that quality. My father tells me about Poland when he was growing up. There wasn't a Shabbos that there was no people that had nowhere to go, that wanderers from other towns that fell into town for Shabbos looking for a meal. There was never a Shabbos in Landshut, where he came from, where there was no wayfarers that somehow ended up in town and they were homeless, they had nowhere to go. And they were always, everyone knew they were going to stand by the door in the synagogue out, the way out for Ma'ariv, and everyone's going to take home a guest. You didn't know who these people were. You didn't even know their name. You had no idea who they were. Today, if someone calls up and asks, could I have right away you want a reference, you want this. And I understand that. I understand it, because today if someone's homeless, there's something wrong. Those days, half the society was homeless. So it was a normal thing. It didn't mean you were... It didn't mean that you were, a strange person. Today, a homeless person is because he's something wrong. Why are you homeless? In America, you have to be homeless. So the fact that you're homeless is already a sign that maybe you have to check into the person. There's some legitimacy to it. I'm not saying there isn't. But we take it a step too far. We take too much. We're too careful. We check too much, and we lose the quality of chesed on the way. With the Hasidic syndrome is too much ingrained in our system today. I tell you, I miss those days. I remember in Crown Heights, even in Crown Heights in America, we had people over at our house. I'm telling you, I cannot believe my father and mother took them in. I Pasha cannot understand how they ever ended up in my house. I think back today, it's unheard of today, would never happen. It wouldn't happen. In my father's house it would, but in everyone else, it can't happen today, such thing. People that, I'm telling you, it was people that stole from our house, and don't ask. They made it in. My father took in people, he didn't have where to stay, took him in. What's the worst that can happen? Well, a lot of bad things can happen today. You never know. I'm not suggesting that. Don't get me wrong.
And in those days, you couldn't have that?
You could have. Baruch Hashem, nothing happened.